Welcome to the Once and Future Author Podcast. I'm Jessica Clark, and I'm so thrilled to be joined by Lori Boarman, the author of Hope Remains. Hope Remains is such a personal book, and it's a personal journey. And what I love about the book is how it's changing other people's lives right after publication. So I'm so thrilled to have Lori. And Lori, thank you for sharing such a personal book and journey with us today. And wow, are you in a wind tunnel there?
Yeah, I'm getting really lots of wind out here.
I see that. Well, I can't blame you for wanting to film from such a gorgeous location. Lori is live from Colorado, so anyone who's stuck indoors right now can be seriously jealous.
The mountains are pretty back there.
They are pretty back there, absolutely. So we'll deal with the wind because, like, look at me indoors. So
yeah, okay.
So much better where you are, and thanks for joining us on the show, and mostly thanks for like digging deep and writing this book, which is just amazing. Can you tell us?
Well, thanks for helping me with it, and
oh my God, this is
being willing to push it through.
Such a pleasure, but mostly an honor to be part of this story, and part of your story. And what I love is the people that it's affecting now. People who are reading the book and their lives are being changed.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best part of it all, for sure.
It is, and I know that's why you wanted to get it out there, and why people were encouraging you even before I met you. People in your own life were encouraging you. Spread this story bigger because it's going to really make a difference. And seeing that difference, wow.
Yeah, I mean, my whole goal was just to change lives, and I guess get the whole mental health movement going a little more and bring awareness. And I think for sure, I feel that, people are telling me and reaching out, and so that makes it all worth it.
It does. But certainly an emotionally gutting book. I'm sure just going through the whole publication process on top of all that had happened was not a pleasant place to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think, when we first talked, I had hoped that I could be done with it in just a couple months, and it was difficult. I felt like I had to take, an entire day, and then there were days that I'd go to work on it, and emotionally I just wasn't prepared for that, because you can't just sit down and work on it for an hour, because it just, I don't want to say it ruins your day, but it certainly brings everything right on that surface again. And so there was a lot of days I had other things I had to get done, or soccer practice to drive my daughter to, or whatever, and I just didn't feel like being in that emotional state. So it definitely took a lot longer than I had anticipated, just because of those times where I just couldn't work on it. And I'll be honest, I still haven't really read through a lot of the original posts that I did, because I knew the content that was in them, when we were pulling content from Facebook, but I couldn't always read through everything because it was just too much.
Of course. Just to give a little synopsis for our viewers, Hope Remains is actually the day-by-day story of, I would say, the first year approximately, or about 16 months after Lori's son's life. And out of the posts that Lori made on Facebook that were just so, I've never read anybody who has such faith. And considering that I was reading posts when I first came on the scene of a woman who was going through the darkest valley of grief that could ever be imagined, to read such faith in the so people expressed to have them into a book, that journey. Wow, to be able to share that faith is amazing. But it really is literally the day-to-day journey of all of those emotions that you've gone through. And I can only imagine that, I know that when I was working, reading the posts, going through edits, formatting things, I was, huddled on the floor, and I can't imagine how reading back would affect you. So I so appreciate you doing all the work, because doing all that work and going to sleep. But you know, can you speak to how you can do that to some other people who may want to go through? I think, at least I hope for you that getting to this point had a positive side. I'm not talking about the initial grief. I'm talking about just the publication process, uh, for other people who may want to write about something that is as heart rendering.
Yeah, sure. I mean, for me, I've always sort of been an open book when people, I mean, just with anything, I'm always like, ask me any question, I'll tell you how I feel. And I don't really know where that comes from, but it was definitely therapeutic for me to write. And so, you know, for anybody going through something hard, I do think getting stuff on paper is helpful. And I know, you know, psychologists will tell you, make, you know, journal, whatever. And I guess in today's age, a lot of us journal now in a different format. And of course, mine was Facebook. And, you know, for me, I guess I'm just always wanting details about things that happen. And so as I was going through these things and writing them, I felt like, you know, maybe other people would want to know those details. And so it was sort of like, in my mind, I guess, to relieve other people's stress of feeling like they don't want to ask me questions, you know, I just started giving them the answers before they asked in a roundabout way, I guess. And um, so I guess it made me feel good to know that they could sort of go through this with me. I know that's kind of bizarre, but
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
yeah, that they didn't have to ask that question. And then I guess too, the whole, you know, people would say, oh, you're so brave, like early on when I was just talking about the incident, you know, just even the first week, and not even necessarily on Facebook, but people would just say, oh, you're so brave, you know, this and I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, suicide and the stigma. And I'm like, is there still a stigma? Like, I guess I was a little blinded to how maybe people were perceiving me. And but that just made it all the more, for me, that made it all the more important to talk about it, because I wasn't embarrassed about it. I knew that I had done a good job as a mom. Of course I had regrets and thoughts and all of that that comes with suicide, but ultimately I guess I didn't care how people judged me. I was more concerned about those in my same situation, the kids that are hurting, the parents, you know, anyone with mental health. And to me, if I don't talk about it, then I'm only contributing to that stigma. And so it was important for me to, you know, make other people not feel like they were the only ones thinking these things, or feeling these things, or the only parents going through this with their kids. You know, I'm like, we are a typical middle class family, and it could happen to anyone. You know, from the outside looking in, we look like everything's perfect, and we know that that's not true in anybody's household. And I'm just not afraid to admit that, I guess.
That alone, what you just said, and there's so many things I find that are a gift in this book, but that alone, removing the stigma that, thank goodness you didn't even realize was still a thing. And I'm glad you didn't. That you just plowed ahead, because that's exactly the way you wrote. That, you know, what has happened here is, of course, heartbreaking and on so many levels, but it is definitely something that, you know, should not be brushed under the table. It should not be, especially since we're dealing with mental health issues. It's something that, if, hey, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this for other moms and family members, but also for people who are in that situation, so that they can, you know, we can all get people help and work towards better ends. I think that that's just such a gift. And I know
Yeah, I
you.
mean, and the crazy thing is you know, as I've talked about it, like, it's unbelievable how many people approach me or message me, and it's like, you would never know. I mean, these are coworkers I have, and, you know, just people all around me. And it's like, you know, they're coming to me because they feel like I can understand. But it's like, when I ask them, you know, it's like, why aren't you talking about it? And it's like, well, I don't want people to think this or that or whatever. And I'm like, but you are that person. Like, you're the person that's helping make everyone not think those you know, or think those things, because you're not talking about it, you know. I mean, when they say 1 in 5, that statistic that mental health will affect some, 1 in 5 people in a year, it's like, to me, I don't comprehend that. And then yet I feel like I'm living it, when I hear constantly people's stories, it's like, yeah, it's everywhere. It's all around you. And so then that's what is just crazy to me, then why people are so afraid of it. Why are they afraid to talk about it? Why are they afraid to address it, admit it, whatever? Because literally almost everyone you're looking at is dealing with it.
I did not realize that was a statistic.
Yeah.
That's huge. And like you said, I mean, 1 in 5, that's 20% of the people that you encounter. If you walk into a store and you see 10 people, 2 of them are dealing with mental health issues right now. That's
Yeah.
enormous. And I mean, goodness, even we're going through a situation right now, obviously in the world, with a virus that affects, and I don't mean to minimize it, but not 1 in 5 people.
Right. I know, for sure. Right.
And the whole world is stopped for something that is certainly not affecting 1 in 5 people, thank goodness. But 1 in 5 people are affected by mental health issues, and yet instead of addressing them, instead of there being an international, movement towards that, we sweep it under the table because we're embarrassed or we're scared or we don't want people to look at us funny. I mean, gosh, I had no idea it was that great.
I didn't either. But I can say that I feel like, yeah, I believe those statistics after, talking about it and being part of the movement. Like I said, people are approaching me or talking to me, and like everywhere, constantly, if it's not them, it's their son or their uncle or their aunt or their sister or their husband or their coworker, I mean, it is that bad, which is again why I'm just so shocked that it is so not addressed, like
And
what
it's
you said
not.
with the whole COVID thing, like, and I know that it's even worse right now,
Oh gosh.
and I certainly am hearing it more, but you know how that is. You don't ever see the car that you end up buying a car, a certain make, model, color, and then you see 100 of them. And so
Right.
for me, I just don't know. I feel like it's getting better and it's more talked about, but I don't know if that's just because I'm more aware and looking for it.
Right. And because people feel comfortable talking with you about it, which is something that you have given people the gift from the first moment you posted, not, long before there was a book, you gave people the gift of being able to talk to you. Just like you said, you're making those posts so that people would not feel like they had to ask the question. They were thinking the things. But besides the details, which, we all, read and said, oh, good, I didn't want to ask exactly how these things went down. But now we also, because of the person you are and the person you present, we realize we can talk to you. And I'm sure people do gravitate.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's true. They feel like I'm not going to judge them back, because I'm vulnerable and open with my own situation. So I'm somehow going to be able to relate and not judge them. And I guess that's what everybody's worried about is, people having these ideas that they're not as good of a person if they have this going on.
Right. And like you said, you might be seeing more of it now because of who you are. But the fact is, I'm guessing that the more of it that you're seeing is at a stage much further along than we'd like. We'd like to have people having the conversation here, not waiting
Yeah.
until we're here. Does that make sense?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I just look at all of the kids, the high schoolers and all that are a mess. And I think so much could be prevented if we just start when the kids are little. And it's just beyond me that we don't do a better job in schools and I mean, everywhere, parenting classes, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, the joke's always right. You have to have a driver's license, but you don't have to have a parent license. But it's like, if we could really just teach parents some more basic things, I feel like it would really help a lot of the insecurities and mental health, anxiety that goes on with so many of these kids these days. There's so much pressure, and we just need better tools and access for these kids to learn how to deal with all of that.
Absolutely. And we worry so much that, they learn Common Core math or
Right.
like
Stuff
that,
they're never ever going to use, but then the basics
exactly.
is important for their life.
Right, but we don't actually have courses in school about things that would help them to be able to be stable and fulfilled adults in the future. We don't teach that at all.
No, I mean, if they do, it's like maybe a day or two in health class in high school, you know,
Right. You
in
know,
one grade.
right there with don't smoke, don't drink, and if you feel
Yeah,
sad, kill someone. Like that's it. You know.
exactly.
Well, the two things that I came away with this was certainly I'm loving how you're shining a light on mental health issues, but I can't help but read you and see your unbelievable faith showing through on every page. And I am just so that dazzled me from the first time I read you. Could you speak with us a little bit about that? Because that's just such a gift that you're giving to other people, is that gift of faith.
Yeah, you know, I never thought of myself as super, I don't know, you know, nobody wants to use the word religious, but I grew up, my dad was a pastor and he was a chaplain in the Army. And so, I mean, I grew up in a faith-based house, you know, but I'll be honest, a lot of it, you know, you go and it's just the ritual of going and, you know, you're saying your prayers, but you're saying kind of the same thing. It's almost memorized. You're not really thinking. And, you know, sometime when I was in my early 20s and, you know, I read a book on finding Noah's Ark and how they thought they had found it. And it was like the first time that really hit me, like that some of that Bible stuff could be true, the science behind it and all of that. And so, you know, when I really found a church that talked about the relationship with Jesus, you know, that's really what changed everything. And it's like not hard. It's not, you don't have to follow all these rules. It's just really about a relationship and trusting him with everything. And so for me, I just always prayed, you know, that his will would be done. And that's a hard thing. I talk about it just briefly at the beginning of my book, how I read a book a long time ago, The Power of the Praying Mom, and, you know, how you really have to release your kids over to God. And there was a story in there about a little girl with cancer. And I just thought, oh yeah, I can do that, you know, but it's easy to think that you trust God enough to just let him, okay, if this is the time to take my child because of, you know, whatever. But I don't think you can ever really know how you would respond to that until you've been through it. And, you know, I really did think that I had that strong faith, but, you know, when we found out that Logan had taken his life, I think probably that was the first time in my life that I could really affirm my faith and say, I know like 100% without a doubt that this is what I believe, because I just knew that I was going to rely on God to bring me through this and to give me peace, you know. And that's, I mean, I had so many friends and family praying that we would have peace, and as hard as it was, and I'm not going to say I felt a ton of peace at first, you know, but I would feel, you know, glimpses of it. And I would know that he was going to carry us through this. And just to see my husband's faith come out and pray that prayer right after we found out, which wasn't like him at all, you know, to speak out loud and just ask Jesus to help us carry us through. Like, I just knew that he was going to be a huge part of this. And, you know, the crazy thing is when I started writing, I've never considered myself a writer. I hated writing in college when we had to do essays and papers. And I know it's not the same kind of writing, but
It's right.
I just, you know, when I started putting stuff on Facebook, it's weird how I've gone back and, you know, or even 2 days later or 1 day later, I'd go back and read it and be like, where did that come from? You know? And so I just sort of feel like I just kept praying that I would follow God wherever he wanted me to go. And so if that meant putting things on paper, I could look back and go, you know, I'm just being obedient. You know, if I felt led to write, I would write. I never wanted to force it. You know, if I'm sitting there and I never sat there and said, okay, what can I put on Facebook tonight or today or whatever. I never wanted it to be that it was a production and it was something that I had to do. It was more just, I felt like putting my feelings out there. And again, just the way some of the posts ended up, or stories I should really call them, came out, I really feel like that was just him speaking through me, because that's not me. Like, you know, a lot of whatever I've written, I've looked back and I'm like, I don't know where that came from. That's not really me. I'm not that creative, or I'm not that good with words. And I'm still very humbled when so many people say, you're just so good at putting the words out there of what you're going through, how you put them. And I don't know, that's hard for me. I guess that's where I really feel like I can't take credit for that. That's really him, you know. And I think if you put everything in an eternal perspective, it does make everything better. You can definitely see light in any amount of darkness, you know. And I guess a lot of my book, I feel like that's the point of it, is for people to be able to look at an eternal perspective and go, you know, no matter what bad happens, you can always turn it into good, or you can always see the good in it. And for sure, I feel like Logan's life is making a difference in other people's lives. You know, if he can save just one life, there was light in his darkness, you know?
Yes, absolutely. I'm just blown away at the two things that happened to you immediately after the incident, which are so so different than so many other people, and for which I'm so grateful. One is that on the issue of the mental health, and even, you know, you were saying how suicide itself is just, you know, such a stigma, that you didn't turn away from that you didn't immediately, like, let's not talk about this, as other people do. You immediately chose exposure and sharing and bringing other people into that, which certainly, you know, helped other people, because so many people, when there's an incident, are grieving, and they don't even have the support of their families and friends because they're not talking about it. And the other choice that you made right away was to have faith. And so many people have a crisis of faith at that moment. That's the moment that they say, I don't believe anything. And they're all alone. And you chose both of those things. You chose to share and, you know, share the anguish, and to be faithful. I'm just amazed with both of them.
I think the sharing is the nursing part of me. I mean, I don't know what number Enneagram that is, but I am a helper person. I'm always wanting to fix people and make them better. I'm a nurse, you know, also. And so for me, I guess by sharing, and I immediately wanted to help people and figure out, okay, so, you know, this was awful in our house. How can I help someone else not have to go through that same thing? And
I can't imagine you thinking about that at that moment. Wow.
It's probably to a fault of mine, where I don't even take care of myself as much as I want to help other people. I don't know where, you know, it's just innate in me, whatever. But I don't know, in my faith, I just think that I had it. I don't know. For me, I don't know that I didn't feel like I was choosing it. I just felt like it was already there. And so, you know, something, I don't know, when people say that, you know, God is always good, they tend to say that when things are going good. And I wanted to be able to say, you know, but he's good and bad too. Like, I mean, he's always good. And so just because something bad happened, you know, I sort of feel like if I would have turned from my faith, then how genuine was my faith to begin with? You know, how much did I truly believe that God was in control of everything, if I'm going to suddenly turn and feel like, because one bad thing happened, and I know it was a huge bad thing that happened, but again, if I'm looking at it from an eternal perspective, everything that's going on here means not much anyway.
Wow. That does put things in perspective, saying it like that. That certainly does.
Yeah, I mean, I always try to look for, like, what are we doing here? Yes, we have a purpose, and, you know, but I mean, I miss my son terribly, but I have to believe that he's in heaven, and that, you know, I don't believe that he's looking down on me, because there's too much bad stuff. He would be seeing all this bad stuff if he's living a great life in heaven. But you know, I have to believe that you know, there is another place that we're going to be someday. And so this is just, I don't know. You can't take your cars with you. You can't take your body with you. I don't know.
Right. No, that's so true. And that really does put everything that we do here on earth in perspective. But you were talking about you having a helper personality. And yes, you're a nurse. And I think nurses are the most selfless people on the face of the planet. And I can't imagine I have nurses in my family, and I look at them and say, thank God they're nurses, because I could never do that. And
Yeah.
and what's going on medically in the world right now, I mean, Herculean.
Yeah.
What nurses can do. So yes, I think nurses are up there with the angels. Absolutely.
Well, you're very sweet, but
No, I feel that way about my family members who are nurses, and the surrounding. I know I couldn't, and I'm just dazzled. But I know since this has happened in your family, people have come to you, besides through the book, but on a personal note, for you to be there at the side of others who are going through their darkest day, and you've been there with other people on their darkest day now. That must be.
Yeah, that's, I mean, I can see where other people can be thinking, like, how on earth could you do that? But I guess in that moment, it's my helper personality that comes out, and I sort of put my, I guess, emotions and feelings to the side and just think of how, how much it would have meant to me if I could have had somebody in the first week who's a mother, that could have been there, and I mean, I did have a mom that I met with shortly after, and that just meant a lot, because I just needed, I was grasping at someone that could relate, and certainly people have lost family members, and there's lots of people grieving, but to me, I needed someone that had the most similar situation as I did. And so for me, I guess, because I wanted that so badly and felt like I needed it, I wanted to be able to give it to other people. And I do, having lost a son to suicide, it is one of the most lonely things ever. I mean, I have my family, I have my friends, I have my faith, but you still feel very lonely. You just feel like people really, they don't, I mean, it's not even, I don't know if it's much of feeling as people don't know what it's like. They can try to imagine it. And there's just times that you are so sad, and so it's so dark, that if I can help anyone just feel a little more like they're not alone,
Right.
That's important to me, I guess.
And that's one of the reasons I was so thrilled when you and I were connected to for me to help you get the book out there, was that there are people right there in Colorado who are coming to you to help them in situations. But this way, any mom or any person around the world who is going through dark moment and feels very, very alone, Lori's been there. Lori's been there, and her writing about what happened and how she, had faith through it all, and through ups and downs. I mean, there were fun times, because fortunately, there are bright lights, even on the darkest days. But it's a journey, and it's such a gift, so that people around the world who are lonely, who are right now saying, "Oh God, I wish I knew somebody who I could relate to you without even meeting you." That's what that's such a gift that you've given people.
Sure. And I mean, I think in there I talk so much about my feelings, and that's where I feel like I don't know why people are so afraid of their feelings. And I mean, there's things in there, there's things I have felt that I'm embarrassed that I felt, or that I wish I didn't feel, but I did feel them. And we can't help, to some degree, we can't help how we feel. And so it's crazy to me that people try to hide from that and don't want to talk about their feelings, because I'm like, this is just, this is you, and this is us, and this is everyone. And we, so many people, I think, feel those same feelings, but they're afraid. And so just for someone else to be able to read that and be able to say, oh, good, I'm not the only one that has felt that way.
Yes. No, and even the things, like you said, that you're kind of looking back and saying, I'm embarrassed, I was feeling that way. You're a human, and you're going through this path that, nobody, I brought you in your life for free.
Yeah. Sorry.
And you'll see the dogs in the book too.
Yeah, well, and we left a lot out. There was a lot of dogs.
There were a lot of dogs. Well, that was kind of funny because I mean the book is how many pages long is this book? It is 316 pages, and it was 3 times that at one point.
For sure.
It
For
was
sure.
3 times as long, and I know for myself and working with you, that was the hardest thing, was cutting it down. And I know in my heart that if this book was, 900 pages, nobody would pick it up, and that's so against what we wanted. We wanted
For
people
sure. For sure.
to pick up the
Yeah.
book, but taking out one word, one picture, one anything grieved me so much to do that. Oh, really, it was horrible. It was horrible. I actually ended up sitting there looking at posts saying, is this important? And everything is important. Every word of it was important. And you talk about the dogs. Every picture of those dogs was important.
I know. I love you too.
Oh, God.
Oh, this is my hourly hug.
Oh, now who is this on your lap?
This is Marlo, the middle one.
The middle one. So how many are there?
There's 4 altogether, but there's 3 St. Bernards and 1 Yorkie.
There's a Yorkie in this mix?
Yeah, somewhere. He was on my lap a while ago.
Is he like the one who rules the roost, even though he's the smallest?
Kind of. He thinks he's the boss, but my oldest Saint kind of puts him in his place sometimes, so you have to get down. I call these my pain suckers because they give me hugs all the time, and definitely have, besides my faith, have been the second best thing to keep me sane.
and that's why I didn't even want to cut a single picture of a dog, just because there were pictures and moments that the dogs came, the pain suckers, and really did help to suck the pain.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for anyone to grasp onto something that gives them joy, not that it has to be dogs, but for me, the dogs really give me joy. And so, if you're going through something, you have to find that. And it definitely makes you can always know the sun's going to shine in the morning. You got your dogs there or whatever it is. It's important to you.
I'm all for doing dogs.
I know, me too, but
I'm all for doing dogs. And at the beginning of quarantine here, one of my favorite things that happened is that the animal shelters here in New York were emptied because everybody went to a shelter and adopted a pet for quarantine. And I'm like, what a great idea. You should have been doing that years ago.
I know, exactly. Only we just keep getting them. So at some point we have to stop, but
yes, well, I have much smaller pets than you do.
Every time a child leaves my house, I end up with another dog. So
oh no, now how old is your youngest? She's not going anywhere yet, is
she just turned 14, yeah, so she has a little ways to go, but
okay. So when she goes to like college or something, you're getting another dog.
Or she's the bad encourager because she wants another one now, but
oh my gosh.
In the city limits, we can't make that happen quite yet. So
is there like an actual ordinance against that in the city limits?
Yeah, you can only have four adult dogs in your house. So another good reason why we need to get moved to our new property.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that there was a rule about that.
I mean, it depends on the county, but yeah.
Wow, boy, I'm learning a lot today. Well, my favorite takeaways, and I want to make sure I hit them all. Certainly, it's staggering how many people are dealing with mental health issues.
Yeah.
And I love that not just this when people are here, but let's deal with this long before it gets to that point. And that's something that has to happen, nationwide and worldwide.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I think, you're seeing a little bit more programs in workplaces, and I'm seeing a lot more stuff on the internet, and people coming out like Michael Phelps and, big people talking about it. So I think it's moving in the right direction, but boy, it sure needs to catch up fast because we're a disaster. And now with COVID, I think, it's beyond my thinking of what really it's going to look like just in a couple years as as these kids continue, grow up in households with parents that don't know how to, don't have the tools to fix themselves, and now they're raising kids, that they aren't and I'm not saying it's all fixable. I mean, some of it's a disease. It's like diabetes. It doesn't go away. So I'm not like saying, oh, just go get some counseling. I mean, there's certainly many things that are out there, and one thing doesn't work for all, but I do think it's got to catch up fast, the awareness and trying to figure out what works for each person, and prevention.
Right. Well, the first step is awareness. And if we're not aware at how many people are struggling with such issues, then we can't even get to the point of access to better health care, prevention, whatever will help a person. If counseling will help, great. If medical intervention is needed, great. Whatever is needed. So.
I dropped my phone and I don't know where you went.
I am here. I think you turned off your video.
I don't see how to bring it back. Sorry. Shoot. I'm in a safe driving mode.
That's so funny. Well, that's okay. We'll hear you and not.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I found it.
Perfect. And through the power of editing, we can just
Okay, good. Sorry about that.
Or I'll leave it in because I thought it was hilarious. So no worries. I've always wanted to have a blooper reel.
Yes, it's real.
Absolutely. I mean, it's real life. And that's one of the things that I love too. We're talking about takeaways. This is real life. And I think that, let's not edit the film of our lives. This is real life, and let's be there for each other, and let's reach out to other people before, during, and after when things happen. Because
I mean, when people say they got my book, they're gonna read it. I'm always a little like, oh, what do I say? Like, happy reading. I mean, I know it's not happy reading. It's like I haven't come up with a good response yet, but
it's something like, wow, you're gonna love the dog picture on page 120 or something.
Yeah, for sure, that's a good one. Because that's what I'm thinking is like, yeah, this is hard reading. I know that it is, but it's real life. And I mean, it can be applied for anything, not just, a mom that lost their son to suicide, but there's so much other helpful content in there, that anyone can get something out of it.
Absolutely. And that's great. And that's huge. I mean, you said once that you unfortunately belong to a club that nobody wants to join.
Exactly.
And we don't want to be there, but so many people who have had other issues, and some people who are in the club. And there are people who are unfortunately in that club who are not with other people who are supportive, maybe because of the stigma of mental health issues and suicide, that they don't have that support system. So they can have you in your support system, because we need to know that we're not alone in things.
Yeah. And there's a lot in there too, just for, I mean, I've had a lot of people tell me, gosh, I'm going to look at this differently now, or I'm going to, treat my students, someone who's a teacher, I'm going to look at my students differently now and try to, there's certainly tips in there and things that I saw in my son that people are, oh my gosh, I see that in my 13-year-old. I am going to start, the whole prevention thing. And I think that's, to me, yes, I don't want people to feel alone. And yes, I want people to be able to relate, but honestly, preventing and helping people see things in themselves or in other people and then fixing it and preventing it is really, my biggest, what I'm most thankful and grateful for when I get those messages of like, you've changed my life, because I was driving down a dirt road and was wanting to take my life. And all I could keep thinking about is, when you just kept saying you have to talk about it. And so I called my mom, and I mean, I've had amazing stories of people that could remember some of the things, that I talk about prevention wise, and so I just know that anyone reading it can get tips. Even if you don't feel like you have any issues, you might have a friend that you might pick up something, in that friend that you would have not before.
Lori, I can't thank you enough, because I can't imagine certainly the anguish that you've gone through in your life, but then to choose to revisit that dark place on an ongoing basis so that you can pass along tips, insights, your journey with other people. You purposely put yourself in that difficult place. The first time it was not your choice, but doing this was your choice, and all the ways you reach out is your choice.
Well, thank you. I don't really see that there's another option. I don't see that there's another way, but I appreciate those sweet words.
No, it's so true, and it's such a gift to other people, and I really appreciate it, and I know that I'm the least of the people who appreciate it because there are so many people that you've touched.
Thank you.
And thank you for including us in your narrative, us, the whole wider world, and all those people that you're helping to strengthen, and for your life and for your faith.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to share the story. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, my privilege. And thanks for joining us. Lori's book, Hope Remains, The Journey Through the First Year After My Son's Suicide, is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, booksellers near you, or you can even visit hoperemainsbook.com if you want to get bulk orders, because I think it would be a great idea if you're running any kind of a group or a not-for-profit organization, youth groups, things like that, so that you can have other people read and share the story. So let's help each other, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Stephanie.